Deepak Chopra. Medicine, man, someone who brought Ayurvedic medicine to the West, author of many books, in short, a teacher. We spoke with him, together with a couple of journalists, at a hotel in Noordwijk, where he was for a seminar.
Healthcare, medicine differ from what we would now call organizational healthcare.
Shall I make a short introduction before we start? Yeah. So I'd like to welcome everybody. Gaan we even hier op tafel zitten, want het is ziet er intiem uit, een beetje huiskamersfeer. So my name is Ralph Bakker. You know, I conduct management training programs on leadership in corporations, healing methods that where Deepak is an expert in. And so, who is Deepak? Well, Deepak is sitting here. Some of you read his books. How many of you are familiar with Deepak's teachings? A little bit. Okay. So Deepak is a medical doctor. You know, in his early 20s, he moved to the United States, where he made a very fast career, became very popular, and later on he got introduced into the concepts of Ayurveda, which is ancient healing. From India, and he wrote many books about all kinds of topics. Some are novels, some are about Ayurveda, some are about healing, some are about spirituality. So he wrote 17 books in fact, and virtually all of these books were humongous bestsellers, really humongous bestsellers. So that means they were translated in 30 languages, which is really a lot. And Deepak is really at the forefront. We're in fact at the midst of a paradigm shift in the world right now, and the paradigm shift is from the material paradigm. We're moving to another paradigm, and I believe in fact we're in the midst of a revolution, which is called I call it the revolution of consciousness, and Deepak is really at the forefront of that. So he's most well known as the premier, the #1 spokesperson on the area of mind-body. Deepak teaches about many things. So it's about healing, it's about health, it's about relationships, it's about spirituality. So in his books there is a very deep message. And
Spirituele leider, leraar Deepak Chopra in Noordwijk.
My interest has been in how the human nervous system and human consciousness operates, and I started my career as a medical doctor, but then I got into holistic healing, particularly the healing techniques of Ayurveda. And as I look back over the last 15-20 years, it's very clear to me that we've gone through different stages in our understanding of how the relationship between the human consciousness and the human body works. We started off with an understanding of preventive medicine, when people became aware that you can prevent chronic illness through proper exercise, diet, meditation, stress management, lifestyle changes. That was only the beginning. It was subsequently very clear to people that not only could you prevent illness, but you could evoke the healing response from within. That over the course of evolutionary time, our bodies have developed a healing response. We make wonderful drugs in our system. The best biological drugs are what we make in our own bodies. We make tranquilizers and sleeping pills and antibodies, and you name it, the human body can make it. in the right dose at the right time for the right organ, and all the instructions are there in the packaging, and the packaging is the human body-mind. Understanding of healing led to a new phase in our understanding of human biology when it became obvious that not only is it possible to evoke the healing response from within the human system, but that it's possible to maintain a state of balance for an extended period of time, and that human aging, unlike the aging of animals, is much more flexible. Human aging accelerates when you're under stress, it slows down if you're happy, but there are studies now that you can even reverse biological age through certain interventions, including meditation, including nutritional supplements, including physical exercise, yoga, breathing techniques. There's a lot of wonderful research that shows that you can change the biological markers of aging, such as blood pressure and body temperature regulation and bone density and so on. I think we're in the midst of an even better understanding now than that which existed only a few years ago. Most human behavior in the last several thousand years, I can just leave it here. Most human behavior in the last several thousand years has been reactive or aggressive behavior, because our brain, our nervous system is hardwired for aggression. You know, in a threatening situation, we either run or we fight. So we have a program in our physiology called the fight-flight response. And beyond that, we have something called the reactive response, where instead of fighting or flighting, we try and manipulate or control the situation. And by and large, humanity has functioned based on these two responses. And it's led to a lot of problems. And you know, at a certain time in our evolutionary history, that was quite good, because in a primordial setting, when we were surrounded by predators, it was a good idea to run or fight. But subsequently, as you know, civilization progressed, the same fight-flight response has been responsible for all the wars and the Holocaust and so many other problems. But the human nervous system does have other responses. We have an intuitive response, which means we can access a mode of intelligence which is beyond the rational, and yet may be more contextual and holistic and healing and nourishing and relational, and does not necessarily have a win-lose orientation, and yet may be more productive in the end. We also have in our nervous system the ability to evoke something which is beyond the intuitive response. You can call it the creative response. Creative response is the ability to manifest something that never existed before, to create something that never existed before. And beyond the creative response is something called the visionary response, where out of your new creation you create a vision that goes beyond your limited individuality. It's a vision that is more global. And finally, beyond the visionary response, we have the sacred response, which means the ability to connect ourselves with our source, with the source of creation, with the source of pure potentiality. So I think we are in the midst of a major shift in our own evolution as a human species. So far, evolution has been always defined in Darwinian terms. In Darwinian, evolution is about survival of the fittest, and which really means survival of the fiercest, survival of the most aggressive. It served a historical purpose, but it's obsolete now. I think for humans, the next phase of evolution is what you might want to call metabiological evolution, which is beyond biology. It's the evolution of consciousness, and ultimately the evolution of consciousness, because we are the only species that is aware of the fact that we are aware. We are the only species that's conscious of consciousness. And as we embark on this metabiological evolution, you know, a famous scientist by the name of Jonas Salk said it will be survival of the wisest instead of survival of the fittest. The wisdom will be the new criteria for fitness. I think that's happening in the world as we begin to, in a sense, dismantle our defenses and approach that domain of our awareness, which is more universal and less ethnocentric and less racist and less prejudice, and go beyond religion to a new experience of spirituality, because religion divides, always divides. Religion has been the most, in a sense, the most dangerous thing in our evolutionary history, ever since the Crusades. But maybe we are going beyond that now.
Why is it so dangerous?
Religion?
Yes.
Every war has been, other than recently, communism and all, was also a religion in a sense. But all the aggression that we have participated in as humans has been on the basis of religion. Religion is very divisive. But spirituality is beyond religion. It's a domain of awareness where we experience our universal nature. So I think religion divides and spirituality unites. We've confused spirituality with religion.
Well, I don't. Sorry.
I think the two most dangerous things are religion and nationalism. Because nationalism is tribalism. And religion is also an expression of tribalism.
But could you give a very good definition about spirituality?
As I just mentioned, spirituality is a domain of awareness where we experience our universal nature, where we feel connected to other living beings, experientially, not intellectually, at the level of experience, where it becomes impossible to hurt or be hurt, which is the same thing. It has nothing to do with religious dogma. Religion is ideology, it's belief system. You know, it's based on faith, whereas spirituality is not based on faith, it's based on experience.
When I listened to Louise Hay, she is very fond of the affirmation technique, being positive. And I heard on a tape of yours, you speak of the thoughts keep coming. So what is your vision on the difference? What can you do with your positive attitude? And what would be an ongoing flow that you cannot control?
Well, I personally feel that whilst it is good to look at the bright side of things, you know, in any moment in our lives, we have the ability to reframe our perception of something. So if you buy a new car, you can think, oh, I lost all this money, or I gained a new car. You know, so it's your interpretation that decides whether you lost the money or you got a new car. The loss of the night is the birth of the day. The loss of getting married is the loss of solitude. So, you know, you can interpret anything in two ways. And some people are more likely to interpret negatively than others who are likely to interpret positively. See a glass and it's half full or it's half empty. So it's a question of where you put your attention. While having said that, I think, and I see a limited role for affirmation, but I also feel that if you try constantly to always think positive thoughts, you're not going to be natural, you're going to be extremely stressed. In fact, in some people who are constantly trying to think positively are the most stressed people, because, you know, they're trying so hard. And, you know, there's nothing more attractive about a human being than their naturalness. And if you take away their naturalness, it's very artificial. And in the long run, I think it creates more stress than to be constantly saying, I have to think positively. So a more realistic way to approach this would be to learn to to witness your own thinking process. Normally we are participants in a drama that's happening in our head, and all it does is to take our participation. The more we participate in the drama, the more the drama self-accentuates itself to melodrama and ultimately to hysteria. So I think there are stages of ability to witness your own thinking process. That's what the great meditative traditions have taught throughout the world. I practice primordial sound meditation, but there are other forms of meditation as well, like vipassana, where you begin to witness your own thinking. And then that's only the first stage. As you begin to witness your own thinking, sometimes you also slip into this gap, which is the silent background against which witnessing happens. And then in that ability to witness your own thinking process, there's also the ability to then detach from it and become the alert witness of the choices you're making. And as you become the alert witness of the choices you're making, you spontaneously begin to change what I call the karmic software, because the karmic software is nothing other than the kinds of thoughts and feelings and emotions and desires that spontaneously happen to you as a result of your past experience. You know, every thought that we have is a result of past experience. It's either an interpretation, which means it's a memory, or it's a choice, which means it's a desire. Every thought is either that, one or the other. It's either an interpretation or a choice. And it's all based on past experience. But as you begin to witness your choices, and as you begin to choose the fact, or become aware of the fact that you get to make choices, you begin to spontaneously change that software that generates thoughts spontaneously.
And at that stage, who is the chooser? Is the mind still involved, or is it completely out of the picture at that moment?
The mind's out of the picture. I mean, the chooser is not in the mind at all. The chooser is in what we call the realm of the soul or spirit. It's the interpreter, and the mind is an interpretation, so there's a big difference.
So actually there is no choice.
Say that again?
So actually there is no choice.
There is choice, and there is no choice simultaneously. There is no choice if you're unaware, then you live in a deterministic universe. You see, if you're unaware, if you're unconscious, what we call the conscious mind, what Freud called the conscious mind, or even Jung called the conscious mind, is actually the unconscious mind. Because people are just walking around like bundles of conditioned reflexes and nerves that are constantly being triggered by people and circumstance. They don't really make choices, they're just programmed completely.
But you said if you get into that gap and you get connected with your soul, and actually you don't have the choice, because then you just have to go with the flow.
Yes, in fact, it's a very interesting phenomenon. You have an infinity of choices, but you make the choice to go with the flow. You have an infinity of choices, but you make what is called the appropriate choice, which is to go with the flow. So whether we live in a universe of free will or determinism is based on our understanding of how aware we are. And as I was saying, what we call the conscious mind is actually the unconscious mind, because it's reflexive and reactive. Whereas what Jung and Freud called the unconscious mind is the conscious mind, because it is orchestrating all the activity, the infinite diversity, even the autonomic nervous system, which is remarkably precise and accurate and knows what to do at the right time for the right situation. It has the right response. The contextual, the creative, the intuitive, the relational mind is what we call the unconscious mind. Well, it's much more conscious than the conscious mind. It's the other way around.
You have a center in San Diego, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Could Could you tell me something about that center?
The center is in La Jolla in California, and it has three basic activities, or maybe four. The first activity is research. We are collaborating with Sharp Healthcare and actually the National Institutes of Health and with other institutions in doing some research studies on breast cancer, on other types of cancer, on reversal of heart disease, on pregnancy and the effect of music and sound. There are many programs going on. We have a program called The Magic of Healing, and these are all being subjected to scientific evaluation. So that's one activity. The second activity is that through the center we offer locally as well as nationally and internationally educational programs, both for individuals and also for institutions and also for businesses. The third activity is that we take care of patients who have some kind of chronic illness or need some help with drug addiction or alcoholism or whatever. And the fourth activity is we actually see people who are quite healthy, and that's the best part of it, when we see healthy people and help them to participate in their conscious evolution. So we're doing all those four things.
EgoSoft, een uniek de enigste op de wereld. Met uiteenzaken als preventie, medicijn, voeden en smartlings, tijdschriften en deel. Alles wat informatie te maken heeft, vindt u bij ons terug. Zeker klassiek als loginiek, maar vooral moderne en niet aan bij ons op. Wij bieden u een nieuw perspectief om uw bewustzijn te verruimen. EgoSoft.
Op het idee van PC. Weesperstraat 103 Amsterdam. Kijk op onze website. En een luxury exchange. Goed idee voor een PC, maar voor een printer. PCE. Net Amsterdam. Bedacht. Goeie prijzen, goede spullen. PCE. Goed voor PC. Weesperstraat 103. Kijk op onze website.
In which way can it change the world? You know, Rupert Sheldrake talks about morphogenetic fields and how a critical mass in a field of coherence can alter the whole field. So I think if you have a critical mass of people who are spiritually connected and have the same intention, I certainly believe that intentionality is a force in nature. And without being too jingoistic about it, too fanatical about it, we can on a very subtle level put our intention there for peace and harmony and laughter, and it might change the world if there's a critical mass of us. If it's true spirituality, it depends on your interpretation of spirituality. My interpretation of spirituality is non-defensiveness, complete and total acceptance and tolerance of another person's belief and viewpoints, detachment, compassion, and love. But if I don't have those, then in my point of view, I'm not spiritual, I'm just a fanatic who's trying to impose my belief on yours. Spirituality really means that I accept you as you are, whoever you are. It also means, spirituality also means understanding the ambiguity of human experience, you know. Therefore, spirituality goes beyond moral self-righteousness, because values are extremely personal. My values may be totally different from yours. Now that doesn't mean that, that anything goes. It means that it's necessary to have a core system of values, because without values we would be bankrupt, spiritually and emotionally. It's important to embrace a certain set of values, but in that doing so, it is also important to respect somebody else's values.
But can you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I do, but I don't think that's spirituality then.
Mm-hmm.
Spirituality is experiential. As soon as spirituality becomes dogma and ideology, it's not spirituality anymore, or belief even.
I speak a lot of business people nowadays. They say, okay, let's stop now. Let's now stop talking about spirituality, and let's go on living and practice spirituality in life.
I think that's a good thing to say. It's important to live it more than it's important to talk about it, certainly. And yet at a certain point we have to try and at least articulate what we're going through as an experience. But it's more important to live it, you're right, absolutely. But most business people who are really, you see, business is based on driving ambition, aggression, competitiveness, win-lose, exacting plans, and hard work and discipline. Spirituality is the complete opposite of that, in a sense. But can one bring about business success without driving ambition, without hard work and discipline, without a win-lose orientation, without competitiveness? Now, my answer to that is yes. I think you can create more business success without all of the above. In fact, there's some recent studies that are looking at successful businesses in America, and I'm quoting from magazines like Fortune magazine and Forbes magazine. And the one thing that correlates most with productivity and financial success, well, there are a few things that correlate more with productivity and financial success in business. They are employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, and investor satisfaction. So if you can make three groups of three constituencies of people happy, the investors, the customers, and the employees, you're going to have a successful business. Now, it turns out that of those three groups, the most critical is the employees. That if you have employees...
Is that research?
Yeah, it's Forbes magazine, okay. Fortune magazine, these are studies. And there are many companies that are looking at this. In fact, I'm working with some of them. It turns out that of those three groups, customers, employees, and investors, the most critical is what? Employees. If the employees are happy, and how do you measure employee loyalty? By turnover rate. So, the company that is doing terrible is that one which has 60-70% turnover rate every year. Half the managers are gone. Okay. The companies that are doing extremely successful are which have a low turnover rate, 5%, 10%, 15% at the most. How do you keep employees happy? Well, not by telling them you've got to produce more, That's how you create stress for your employees. You keep employees happy by getting interested in their lives. You find out what is it that makes them happy. And companies like DuPont, which is a very big company now, they have realized that there is a direct relationship between employee loyalty and what's happening outside the business, outside in their homes, with their children, with their parents, with their lives. So DuPont has now programs for children of their employees. They have camps, they have programs for better health for their employees. They have programs even for taking care of their elderly parents. Companies like State Farm, which is a huge insurance company, has a turnover rate that's so remarkably low, because even when they don't need an employee, because they're downsizing and the employee is not necessary anymore, instead of firing the employee, they'll train him for another job. So they culture that loyalty, and they have 60% more profit as compared to their competition. So that kind of data, when it begins to emerge, it shows very clearly. And some of the most admired companies, on the New York Stock Exchange, like Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, Rubbermaid, which are big companies, are now employing spirituality to create customer loyalty, but based on employee loyalty. And the investors are happy if you make a lot of money. That's the bottom line. But what makes a lot of money is to keep your employees happy.
Mr. Chopra, it's nearly 50 years ago you was born. What's your age?
Well, my chronological age is about 50. I was just 50 a couple of weeks ago. Biologically, I'd say I haven't measured it, but I feel like I'm 25. Psychologically, it depends, So one day I'm 50, and one day I'm 60, and one day I'm 30. It depends.
Oh, it can be more than 50 also.
Sure.
No answer.
And then karmically?
Karmically, of course, we're all ancient beings, huh?
How do you define our age? Is this the age of miracles? Is this the age of change?
I think our age is the age of transformation. Our age is the age of the overthrow of the superstition of materialism. Our age is the age of major change and transformation. When there is major change, there's the unleashing of a lot of negativity as well, violence and hatred and ethnocentrism and racism and bigotry and terrorism. It's all happening at the same time as we are evolving, hopefully, to a new millennium, an age of consciousness. But there's a reaction to that.
If you look at the world as an entity, would you say it's sick, or is it getting better? Is it?
I like to interpret things in more ambiguous terms than say that it's getting better or it's sick. It's both. I mean, there's no question that there is a lot of sickness in our world. There's a lot of imbalance in our world. We have become, human beings are the biggest predator on this planet. We are the only animal that kills its own species. We are the only animal that does it for no reason whatsoever. We are the only one that's destroying the ecological balance. We are the only one that pollutes the planet. We are quite vicious and quite full of rage. But on the other hand, we're also the only ones who thinks of God. We're the only one who thinks that there is meaning in life. We're the only one who writes poetry and music and philosophy. So we are very inexplicable, mysterious human beings. Where we are going, I like to think we're going in the direction of positivity. But as we're doing that, we're also seeing the contrast that exists in terms of negativity. My hope is that as we move into the new millennium, that these turbulent negative forces will die down. In many ways, we've seen walls break down, with the East-West bloc coming together, the end of the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall. But at the same time, we're seeing an uprise of fundamentalism. And it's not, people when they say fundamentalism, they say Islamic fundamentalism. Not true. Christian fundamentalism, Hindu fundamentalism, even Buddhist fundamentalism. These are supposed to be the most peaceful people in the world, built on compassion. And they're burning themselves up and other peoples in Sri Lanka and other places. And yet, if you look at the word fundamentalism, it means going back to fundamentals. So maybe that emergence of fundamentalism is a reaction also, to this change. Even though we like to think that we make all this happen, I don't think, it's anything that we consciously can participate in it, and say the global network is an attempt to do that. But in many ways, it seems like it's part of the evolutionary history of the planet, where the pendulum swings from one extreme to another and then starts swinging back to the other extreme.
Yet you go back to things that other people would call fundamentalists, like Ayurvedic medicine is very old. You know, it comes from the Vedic scriptures that are 4,000 years old.
Right.
Why
and therefore,
are you not a fundamentalist in going back to that?
Because I don't take Ayurveda as it was 4,000 years. I reinterpret it. I take some of it. I discard a lot of it. I go back to what I think I can sift out of it and correlate with my understanding of modern science. If I were to say, do everything that's there in the ancient Ayurvedic texts, that would be fundamentalism. But, like anything else, whatever system you look at, there's a lot of things there that are really good and some of things that are obsolete. You take the good stuff and leave the obsolete out.
Is there good stuff in Ayurvedic as far as, say, AIDS goes, or other diseases that we experience now?
There are a lot of good studies coming out now that simple things like meditation, like massage, for example. Massage causes the release of neuropeptides like VIP into your system, which block the receptor site for the AIDS virus. Vasoactive intestinal peptide, there are research studies on that, and that you can decrease the morbidity and even the mortality influence of things like AIDS through lifestyle changes. And there's something very mysterious happening in AIDS right now, in that it's not so virulent, it's not so life-threatening as it was 10 years ago. Part of it is because of some very wonderful drugs that have come about in the last 5-6 years that will have an effect on the morbidity from AIDS. But a lot of it may be due to behavioral changes and lifestyle changes and stress management and better nutrition, and even things like massage, which have their basis in holistic systems.
Another thing that wasn't there when Ayurvedic medicine was started a long time ago is electromagnetic radiation. We are at this moment bombarded by all kinds of radiation. How does that relate to your...
And you're contributing to it when you broadcast your show.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel that like anything else, we adapt to environmental change. I mean, that's the whole history of evolution, is the history of biological adaptation to change. And even though we think of electromagnetic radiation as quote-unquote artificial, fundamentally there's nothing artificial about anything, because, whatever we create, we're not creating. It's nature's intelligence operating through the nervous system. After all, this is part of nature, right? So when you make a Boeing 747, or you even make a nuclear bomb, it is nature's intelligence that is operating through the human nervous system that is creating all this stuff. Ultimately, there's only nature. We are recycled earth and water.
Stardust.
Huh?
Stardust.
Stardust. And we do everything. So ultimately, there's nothing unnatural, including a microwave oven. But as we change, what does happen is that during the, adaptation can take millions of years, or at least thousands of years, or hundreds of thousands of years, depending on what you're adapting to. During that period, there may be, a lot of morbidity attached to that adaptive process. So there's radiation sickness, and there's the effects of radiation. Those that are weak, those who are not able to adapt, as usual, survival of species will become extinct. And those that adapt will go on. And you can't stop technology, because that's also part of evolution. You can't. Those technologies that are really dangerous will also be sifted out, as people learn more about them. So the answer to your question is that I think the contamination of the environment with electromagnetic radiation is probably dangerous to the health of a lot of us. That's number one. Number two, you can't stop it. Number three, evolution will find its own solution.
Dinosaurs died.
They became extinct, yes. It's possible that humans may become extinct.
Yeah,
but the advantage of being human is that we can kind of, the advantage of humans as opposed to dinosaurs is that we can become aware of some of the things that we should not do, make nuclear bombs. But we had to still make them in order to realize that we shouldn't do it, and it takes a long time to learn, unfortunately.
What I'm trying to find out is that in your theory, or in the theory of Ayurvedic medicine, you have different types. Is the world as a whole, at this stage, in a specific mode, where we would say, hey, we need more Vata or whatever, more kind of energy? What does the world need if you look upon your experience with medicine on a grand scale?
I don't know what that has to do with types. The types have to do with three basic forces of nature: movement, transformation, and structure.
Which of those three forces are most noticeable at this moment in the world?
Transformation.
Transformation.
Transformation. But what does the world need most? Awareness. Awareness is what you need. You need to, I think in awareness spontaneously comes the ability to make choices that are evolutionary. And choices, by evolutionary I mean those that protect you and protect those who are affected by you and your choices.
What is a very simple way for people or the world to get more aware?
Spending time with themselves. For me personally, that means meditation, but it could be just being alone. It means spending time with yourself is the only way to become aware, because most people are so busy spending time with everyone else that they're strangers unto themselves, and they're driven by archetypal energies, and they're not aware of it. Their behavior is totally reflexive and reactive, and therefore unconscious.
Are you still...
In a lot of big problems nowadays that man gets more and more disattached from nature. You say everything is nature, your video camera is nature because it's made of stuff that we found in nature, but... And
also that we are a product of nature.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not aliens,
No, but isn't there a greater gap between mankind nowadays
and that's,
nature?
as I was saying, that's because of lack of awareness. I mean, the gap can be bridged by getting in touch with your own self and recognizing that there is a gap. Most people are not aware that there's a gap. You go to inner city Los Angeles, a child has not seen a tree. So what does he know about nature, or she know about nature? So as we become aware of that, that gap will be bridged. On the other hand, technology will never stop. We have to accept that. It's part of our evolution.
A few moves ago you said, when you said that the dinosaurs were extinct, maybe mankind can be extinct.
I think if we continue on our predatory course, like other predators, we will become extinct. But I think there's a saving grace in that at least we're becoming conscious. Some of us are becoming conscious that maybe that's not the right way to go.
Where does that leave spirituality when mankind should be extinct?
I don't understand the question.
Well, I mean, we started talking about spirituality.
If we embrace spirituality, I think then we probably will at least not consciously risk our extinction.
Mm-hmm.
So spirituality could be the saving grace, but extinction could still happen.
But will it die with mankind, with the extinction?
No, spirituality is what is expressing itself as the intelligence that's behind the scenes of everything in nature, and the spirit doesn't die when, you know, matter dies. It's just like Beethoven's symphony doesn't disappear when you destroy your radio.
Well, it does, because nobody will be listening to it anymore.
That's a good point. At least not as, yeah. It does in a sense, yes, if all the radios are destroyed. Mm-hmm. Right.
But is there some kind of spirituality which will continue
independent of us?
Independent of mankind?
If we become extinct as a species? That's asking me to guess. And my guess would be yes. You know, it would not be experienced as we experienced it, but you know, if it's the fundamental ground of creation, and the creator wants to do nothing other than create. I mean, that's the definition of potentiality, that it wants to manifest into form and phenomenon, that you can't destroy the creator, or you might be able to destroy some aspects of the creation.
You're still a part of the TM movement.
Am I?
Yes.
No, that's history.
That's history for a long time?
Has been, yeah, for about 6
and why
years.
Is it?
Why did that happen?
Yes.
Like anything else, there's a place for everything in your life. I learned a lot, especially from my personal relationship with Maharishi. Mm-hmm. But at a certain point, I got frustrated with the dogmatic belief system of the organization, and in a sense the self-righteousness, and you know, we're the only ones who know the truth. Right. That happens, by the way, with every organization. It's not unique to the TM movement. I think there's some great things that they did, and continue probably to do, but I'm not a participant.
But it was more or less a religion.
Yeah.
It divides.
Yes, unfortunately.
I see it in Holland too.
Yeah, and there are good things that they do. But you know, it's when you say that we are the only ones and nobody else is doing it, that's when the problem comes. A lot of people do good things.
TM, as a movement, about 3 years ago, started to become political. All over the world, they started parties, natural.
That was one of the reasons I left, by the way. As soon as I see that happening, I didn't want to be involved with that.
On the other hand, you are working on a global network yourself.
Now, let me explain what the global network is, since maybe you know what it is, what it isn't.
Explain it.
But the global network is a way of connecting people to each other, and it is a way of increasing camaraderie amongst different people of different countries. It's a way also of having people participate in creating scholarships and funds and educational programs for those who cannot afford them. And they don't have to be spiritual programs. Some child in Zimbabwe needs a liver transplant, and you can approach the global network and they will help you procure that through their contacts. You know, we have an amazing network of people all across the world that are willing to help, irrespective of what religion or dogma or political party they belong to. So the global network is more, comes to its mission statement is service rather than indoctrination or proselytizing or dogma or belief. How can we help?
But isn't that a first step from the inexperience towards a social structure, a religion, basically an organization that you start that very soon will have values of its own and then become like maybe TM.
Then I'll quit. When it happens, I'll quit. When that happens, I'll leave. I hope that doesn't happen. So far, you know, I don't even have any vote in the network. It's decided, you know, everything that they do is their own. then, and even, you know, if somebody applies for funds or scholarships, they don't have to belong to the network. If that ever happens, if you start becoming self-righteous and dogmatic, I'll move out.
Cyberspace, that's what we're talking about. Your global network is now of people, but you're talking about internet and connecting. Cyberspace has the danger that we only see what we want to see. That we only seek out the data that we consider information.
Right.
You share that danger, you see the danger there.
Yeah, it's also the danger when you're going to be choosing from 500 channels in the next couple of years. And in fact, that's how science has operated too, you know. We think science is neutral, it's supposed to be, but after all, remember, who's doing science? Who's doing science? It's a scientist who has his own biases and his own prejudices and his own opinions. And of course, if you believe Rupert Sheldrake and others, then the bias of the scientist influences the outcome of the experiment. So by and large, that's true of anything that you do, whether you're doing science or whether you're choosing which radio station to tune into or what television channel to tune into.
Isn't there a danger that the cyberspace, people getting on the internet, that's a giant excuse for not experiencing reality as it comes to us now?
I have a very difficult time answering that question because I don't know what reality is other than a symbol. You know, reality is a symbol of your intentionality and what you choose anyway. When the reality is, if I step out of this place and, you know, go to the red light district, that's reality. You know, it's normal reality. The reality going here is reality. It's always a choice. Reality. Ultimate reality is beyond that. Ultimate reality is the potentiality to make any choice you want. So I do see that the internet, you know, like anything else, could be really something very important for the healing of the world, or could be very destructive. It depends on whether we as a society are psychotic or not. You know, when the Holocaust happened, you know, most people say, hey, this was Hitler who was responsible. It's not true. I mean, who's Hitler? He's just a second-rate corporal with a poor self-image. It's a collective psyche that has gone psychotic. And one of the symptoms of psychosis is that you don't know you're in it when you're in it. You know, it's only after you wake up from it, or in hindsight, you say, this was psychotic. So when we are in the midst of a psychosis, we don't know. And then what is psychosis anyway? You know, I mean, it's, psychosis is what doesn't conform to everybody else's values. See, the whole thing is so bizarrely relative that the best we can hope to do is take care of myself. You know, I want to take care and see that I become a more conscious being. And if I become a more conscious being, and you decide that you also want to be a more conscious being, maybe there are enough conscious beings, the world will change. Let's hope.
Yet you started a global club. Yet you started with a global club, not only taking care of yourself and your own consciousness, but you started a club.
For those who are interested, yes.
Will you be able to hold that club in hands? I mean, Muhammad surely didn't mean things to happen as they happen now in Islam. Jesus didn't mean things to grow like it grew in...
What's the answer then? Don't try to help?
I don't know. Doesn't it occupy you when I'm starting something, but will I be able to hold this in hand, or am I not creating something that...
you know, I sat down when I started with this. I sat down with about 150 people for a 7-day retreat in meditation and said, what do you want to do with your life? And you know, we went for 7 days and people came up with 4 things that they wanted to do with their life. Okay, they wanted to heal their life. They wanted to be of service. Okay? They wanted to love. And they wanted to feel harmony with others. And that's how it came about. So now, if that's the mission statement, that you want to serve, that you want to love, you want to be at peace, and you want to have harmony in your life, And you know, if you're an alcoholic, what do? You find fellow alcoholics that can go with you in the bar, right? I mean, like seeks like. It's a human thing. So there are people who want to do those things. They seek others. I don't think you say, well, if I don't want to do this, I shouldn't seek others of my own kind. I mean, it's only natural to do that. Now, where that will lead 100 years from now, I don't know. But as long as you maintain your values, that's the only thing you can do. That's the best you can do.
EgoSoft. Een unieke winkel in Amsterdam en de enige cybershop ter wereld. Met uiteenlopende zaken als brainmachines, systemen, hypnosesystemen en muziekten, voedingsapps en smartings, boeken, en veel meer. Alles wat met informatie te maken heeft, vindt u bij ons terug. Niet enkel als yoga, maar vooral moderne en technieken staan bij ons op. Wij bieden u een nieuw perspectief om uw bewustzijn te verruimen. EgoSoft.
Goed idee voor een PC. Wees per straat 103 Amsterdam. Kijk op onze website